Whether people think it's good or it's bad or it's ugly, I want people to know that this is who I am.
There was a time when Justin Timberlake was everywhere, the golden boy of pop culture, a voice that defined the 2000s, and a performer who could glide from a Grammy stage to a movie set without missing a beat. From the synchronized perfection of NSYNC to the smooth swagger of his solo hits. He wasn't just famous, he was adored. But fame, in Hollywood, rarely lasts untouched. 2 decades after that shimmering rise, Timberlake's name no longer evokes pure admiration. It sparks debate, frustration, and, for some, a quiet sense of justice.
He was once at the top of the charts, one of the biggest names in music. But when Justin Timberlake was pulled over on Sunday night, the cop who arrested him for DWI had no idea who he was.
What happened to the Prince of Pop? How did a man once celebrated for charm and reinvention become a symbol of privilege, denial, and selective accountability? Was this downfall the result of a single mistake or a pattern long ignored? This is the story of Justin Timberlake's rise, reign, and reckoning, and the question that still divides his fans. Did he fall? Or was he finally caught by the consequences he helped create? Long before the flashing cameras and sold-out arenas, Justin Randall Timberlake was just a small-town boy from Memphis, Tennessee, raised in a family where music was more than background noise. It was a way of life. His father led the church choir, his mother managed community performances, and his grandfather filled the house with the voices of Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson. Gospel, country, and soul that was the language of home. By 11, Justin was already chasing the spotlight, wearing a sequin jacket and the stage name Justin Randall. He sang his heart out on Star Search. He didn't win, but the moment lit a fire that would never go out. Soon after, he joined the all-new Mickey Mouse Club, performing alongside future icons like Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, and J.C. Chases. When the show ended in 1994, most of his peers went back to normal life. Justin didn't. He was already thinking bigger. At just 14, he and Chases were recruited by music mogul Lou Pearlman to form a new boy band, NSYNC. The group found its first success in Europe before exploding across America. Their harmonies so sharp they seemed engineered. By the late 90s, NSYNC was everywhere topping charts, dominating TRL and selling out arenas. But fame came with fine print, behind the glitter. Pearlman had been secretly pocketing their profits. Their public legal battle turned NSYNC from teen idols into underdogs, and when they finally broke free, they released No Strings Attached in 2000, a not-so-subtle declaration of independence. It sold 2.4 million copies in its first week, shattering records. And beneath that success, Timberlake was already evolving. The curls, the choreography, the boy band polish, all of it was just the beginning. He wasn't content being one-fifth of a pop machine. He wanted to be the architect of his own sound, his own image, his own legacy. So when NSYNC went on hiatus, everyone knew the truth. The boy from Memphis was about to reinvent what it meant to be a pop star. When Justin Timberlake stepped out on his own in 2002, few believed he'd make it. History wasn't kind to boy band frontmen who tried to go solo, but Justified didn't just defy expectations, it exploded. Backed by the Neptunes and Timbaland, Timberlake traded bubblegum pop for slick R&B, creating a sound that felt like the future. Tracks like I Love You and Rock Your Body reintroduced him to the world not as a teen idol, but as a serious artist. And then came Cry Me a River, the breakup ballad that doubled as a public reckoning. With its icy production and raw emotion, it became both a chart-topping hit and a cultural moment, cementing Timberlake as the voice of early 2000s heartbreak. By the mid-2000s, Timberlake was everywhere on the radio, on red carpets, on movie screens. His sophomore album, Future Sex Love Sounds 2006, turned success into dominance. It fused R&B, funk, and electronic music with a confidence few pop stars could match. Songs like Sexy Back and What Goes Around, Comes Around weren't just hits, they were statements. The album sold over 10 million copies worldwide, and critics who once dismissed him as a boy band leftover now called him a pop innovator. He mastered reinvention. On Saturday Night Live, he turned self-parody into art. On award stages, he danced beside Beyoncé, laughed with Jimmy Fallon, and transformed into a crossover archetype, the suave, self-aware entertainer who could sing, act, and joke without losing his cool. By 2007, Timberlake's estimated net worth had topped $70 million. Endorsements rolled in, and his film roles from Alpha Dog to The Social Network added another layer to his cultural footprint. He wasn't just a musician anymore, he was a brand, a shorthand for effortless success. But fame has a rhythm, and every rhythm has a break. As his career climbed, so did questions about the cost. His image as the charming golden boy was built partly on others' public pain. Stories the press framed as his triumphs. For most of the 2000s, no one wanted to look too closely. He was, after all, the Prince of Pop, the heir to Michael Jackson's showmanship and Madonna's chameleon-like reinvention. He ruled radio, headlined Super Bowls, collected Grammys, and shaped an entire era's sound. Yet, behind the spotlight's shimmer, the cracks began to show. The world had cheered his rise now. It was starting to watch more carefully. Because in pop, as in life, every beat of glory is followed by a pause. And Justin Timberlake's was coming. For years, Justin Timberlake's image had seemed untouchable, the perfect blend of talent, charm, and self-awareness. But even at the height of his fame, subtle fractures were forming beneath the polished surface. It began, as it often does in pop culture, with a breakup that became a weapon. When he and Britney Spears parted ways in 2002, Timberlake controlled the narrative. Cry Me a River wasn't just a hit, it was a public trial in melody. The video's lookalike actress and vengeful lyrics left little doubt about who the unfaithful lover was meant to be. While he ascended, Spears became tabloid prey, mocked and vilified. Few noticed the imbalance then, many would only see it years later as the first sign of a pattern of man who prospered while women paid the price. Around the same time, whispers about Lou Pearlman, NSYNC's former manager, began to circulate. Lawsuits revealed he defrauded his artists out of millions through a massive Ponzi scheme, and darker rumors hinted at exploitation behind closed doors. Timberlake and his bandmates publicly condemned Pearlman only after the scandal erupted another moment where silence had been easier than confrontation. The media loved Timberlake's bad boy gone good persona. Yet offstage, he leaned into the very antics that would later haunt him, flirtations caught on camera, jokes that aged poorly, a habit of stepping back when controversy flared. His charisma made it easy to forgive. His privilege made it easy to forget. Looking back, the red flags were all there, the convenient timing of apologies, the selective empathy, the tendency to move forward unscathed while others absorbed the backlash. Fans excused it as youth, critics called it strategy. But fame has a memory. Every small controversy, every unspoken slight, was quietly recording itself in the cultural archive. And one day, all those fragments, the songs, the silences, the double standards would converge into something impossible to ignore. Had people noticed the signs then, they might have seen the fall coming. But in 2003, the music was still too loud, and the applause drowned out the warning. Every empire of fame has its breaking point. For Justin Timberlake, it arrived on a Sunday night in February 2004, the Super Bowl halftime show that changed pop culture. During the Super Bowl halftime show, Timberlake performed Rock Your Body with Janet Jackson. On the final lyric, I'll have you naked by the end of this song, he tore away part of her costume, exposing her breasts live on air to nearly 90 million viewers. It lasted half a second, but it set off a moral firestorm. The media called it Nipplegate. Politicians demanded punishment. The FCC fined broadcasters over $500,000, and Jackson's career was effectively blacklisted. Her music banned from MTV and radio stations owned by Viacom. Timberlake, meanwhile, called it a wardrobe malfunction and performed at the Grammys just a week later, winning 2 awards. It wasn't just a controversy, it became a cultural turning point, symbolizing how women in pop often pay the price for men's mistakes. More than a decade later, Timberlake's name surfaced in another kind of scandal not glamorous, but telling. Employees of his Los Angeles restaurant, All Fudge, accused the owners, including Timberlake, of withholding over $400,000 in staff tips. The lawsuit claimed that celebrity investors profited while servers were underpaid for events attended by the Hollywood elite. Although Timberlake was not personally accused of wrongdoing, his association with a brand that exploited workers contrasted sharply with his carefully managed, family-friendly image. The case settled quietly, but it was the first sign that the nice guy brand was wearing thin. Then came a different kind of exposure, not on stage, but off it. In November 2019, paparazzi caught Timberlake in New Orleans during filming for the movie Palmer, holding hands with co-star Alicia Wainwright on a balcony. The images him visibly intoxicated, her hand resting on his thigh, spread across tabloids within hours. Married to actress Jessica Biel, Timberlake faced a wave of criticism for infidelity. Days later, he posted a public apology on Instagram, blaming a lapse in judgment and too much drinking. He emphasized that nothing happened, but the damage was done, for the first time. The public saw a crack in his seemingly perfect marriage and a tendency to minimize personal accountability. When the Free Britney movement gained momentum in 2021, old interviews between Timberlake and Britney Spears resurfaced. In clips from early 2000s talk shows, Timberlake laughed about their breakup, joked about sleeping with her, and let the media vilify her while his own fame soared, after years of silence. The documentary Framing Britney Spears reframed those moments not as youthful immaturity, but as part of a culture that rewarded male charm and punished female vulnerability. Timberlake's delayed apology to both Spears and Janet Jackson was met with skepticism. Many saw it as reputation management rather than reflection. Then, in 2023, Spears released her memoir, The Woman in Me, revealing that she became pregnant at 19 and that Timberlake allegedly urged her to have an abortion, saying he didn't want to be a father. The story shocked the public not because of the event itself, but because it revealed the emotional imbalance behind one of pop culture's most famous relationships. The Prince of Pop image began to crumble, replaced by a portrait of a man who had long benefited from narratives written at others' expense. The breaking point arrived in June 2024. Timberlake was arrested in the Hamptons for driving while intoxicated, after reportedly running a stop sign. According to the police report, when told he was being arrested, he muttered, "This is going to ruin my tour." Those words spread faster than any headline, 5 words that perfectly captured 2 decades of self-preservation. The arrest wasn't shocking for its severity, but for what it revealed, a superstar still gauging crisis in terms of public image, not personal consequence. For the first time, Timberlake's charm, the very quality that had built his empire, no longer worked. The public mood had shifted, nostalgia turned to scrutiny, sympathy to fatigue. Each old clip, each apology, now sounded rehearsed. His downfall wasn't a single moment, it was the cumulative effect of years in which accountability was postponed, deflected, or softened by charisma. He had spent a career singing about mirrors. Now, one finally stared back, showing not the boy who brought sexy back, but the man who could no longer outrun his own reflection. After the storm, Justin Timberlake did what many fallen stars attempt. He tried to rewrite the story. In 2021, after years of silence, he issued a public apology to both Britney Spears and Janet Jackson. It came only after framing Britney Spears reignited global outrage. His statement admitted that I failed and acknowledged that America treats women and people of color more harshly. The words sounded right, but they arrived 17 years too late. For many, it felt less like reflection and more like risk management. When photos of him and Alicia Wainwright holding hands surfaced in 2019, Timberlake released another carefully worded note on Instagram, blaming alcohol for a strong lapse in judgment. He promised to be a better husband and father. His wife, Jessica Biel, stood by him. His career did not. The sincerity of his apologies was always questioned not because of what he said, but because of when he said it. He continued to release music, launch tours, and present himself as a family man, a reformed father figure of pop. But every new project felt haunted by unfinished business. His 2024 Forget Tomorrow tour began as a comeback, but was overshadowed by his DWI arrest before it could even gain momentum. The optics, the mugshot, the slurred soundbites, the worried fans dismantled years of image control overnight. Timberlake's attempts at redemption stumbled because they followed a familiar script: apologize only when cornered, stay quiet when accountability is inconvenient, and trust that charm will fix what conscience cannot. But audiences have evolved. In a world reshaped by Me Too and public reckoning, apologies without accountability no longer hold. He wasn't the first celebrity to fall, but his downfall marked a shift. The old playbook of silence, PR statements, and sympathy tours no longer worked. What the world demanded wasn't another hit song or heartfelt post, it was honesty. And that, for all his talents, was the one thing Timberlake never seemed ready to perform. In the quiet after the headlines fade, Justin Timberlake's story now lives in the uncomfortable space between nostalgia and reckoning. He still tours, still releases music, still commands stages, but the aura is different. The applause sounds measured, the adoration fractured. What once felt like mass devotion now feels like divided memory. In the years since his peak, the world around him has changed. The same industry that once protected him now faces louder demands for accountability and equality. The Me Too movement exposed power imbalances Timberlake once benefited from. The Free Britney campaign reframed the way we talk about control and exploitation in pop culture. And the 2004 Super Bowl scandal, once dismissed as an accident, is now taught as a case study in double standards: race and gender in the media. His legacy is complicated. He remains one of the best-selling male artists of his generation, a gifted performer who helped modernize pop and R&B. But his career is also a reminder of how easily fame can shield, distort, and delay justice. Behind the choreography and chart toppers lay a pattern charm used as armor. Success as silence, privilege as invisibility. To some, he's still the Prince of Pop. To others, he's the man who embodied an era of selective accountability, a mirror of how Hollywood once operated, before audiences demanded better. And maybe that's the truest measure of his legacy, not the records sold or awards won, but the uncomfortable lessons his downfall left behind. Because when the music stops, what remains isn't just the melody, it's the echo of everything we chose to ignore until it was too loud to pretend anymore. From Disney prodigy to global superstar, from idol to outcast, Justin Timberlake's story mirrors the rise and reckoning of an entire era in pop culture. He was the voice of a generation that grew up watching him, dancing to him, forgiving him, but fame, like rhythm, always demands a cost. And in the end, the man who once set the tempo found himself out of sync with the world he helped shape. His downfall wasn't sudden. It was cumulative, the slow collapse of a pedestal built on charm and avoidance. For years, he stayed ahead of consequence. But history, like melody, always repeats, and eventually, the echoes caught up. The question now isn't whether Timberlake can make a comeback. It's whether the public even wants him to. Do we ever truly forgive our fallen idols, or do we simply grow tired of remembering why they fell? And when we celebrate redemption, are we rewarding growth or forgetting the harm? Fame creates myths. Accountability reveals people. And somewhere between those two realities stands Justin Timberlake, once the golden boy of pop. Now, a cautionary tale about what happens when talent outpaces truth.